Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crow's Greenfoot Lessons. Today we're going to be doing one of my favorite projects, which is a maze project. And let's go ahead and get going on it from the very start. So I know I want my maze to be larger in general than this size. So if you open the editor, if it will open for me. There we go. We can just go 800 by 600 and see how that works, how that fits our screen. That looks pretty good. Okay, so yeah, I usually use something like this. This is about a good size for a screen. And next we're going to need to change our background so it looks like a pre-made maze that's pretty simple to follow. So I just looked up a simple maze, and then I chose one that I thought looked good. I thought this one looked like a good, not way too complicated where I'd spend way too much time making my maze, but not so simple that people can just easily go through it without even doing anything. And I also noticed that there are areas where I could have a teleporter to teleport me to a different part of the maze, which is something that I'm going to be using, as well as room for some flexibility here to make some enemies moving around my screen if I wanted to make it a little bit more challenging or just to change things up a little bit. So there are different, it might not look like a traditional maze exactly, but it's going to work well for mine. So this is the one I chose. So I saved my image, save image as, and then if we go into our Greenfoot, we can set image, and then we can import from file. And I can go to my downloads. This is where it'll automatically go for most of you. And it'll just be a maze image, select it, okay, and then it'll automatically upload right here. And then my maze is a little bit too big. So if you were to go into your paint or whatever your photo editing tool that you might have on your computer, and you go to open up the maze, you can check the size of it, so you can resize it. And my pixels are 700 by 560. Now I know my height of my maze can't be much higher. So 600 it's 800 by 600, this one is. So can't be much higher than that. So I could resize it slightly maybe to 750. Oh, 750 by 600 is exactly, would be about the exact size I'm looking for. So I would need to resave this, replace it. Okay, then I would go back in and I would re-import that same image from my downloads, and then when I actually go new, I click new, it creates the new size of the world, which is what I'm looking for. So I need it to be a little bit shorter. It is 750 is the height that it's supposed to be. I have it at my X as 800. So you can just change that to 750. And that will give you the size of your maze that we're looking for. Okay, so now we're going to need to start creating our walls for our maze. Wall width, excuse me, I'm just going to create a walls, and this is going to be what we call a superclass. So this will have code in it or in other classes that will, since we're going to have different size lengths of walls, we are going to have this be the superclass that anything, when the character runs into any type of wall that is under this wall's superclass, it will be treated like any of the any walls. So this will have all of the long walls, the short walls, the tall walls, all will be under this superclass walls, and all information of you hitting any type of wall will be part of the superclass of walls, and it'll be easier to understand once you see it. So we're going to right click on walls and make a subclass of walls, which will make an arrow, another arrow down, and we're going to call it wall width small. Okay, this will tell us that this is the shortest wall that we will have. So one of the objects that kind of looks like a wall and it's easy to manipulate is the brick. And so our brick is really still pretty darn small. Okay, so if I could make a wall width that was about 2.5 or 3 times the width of what one of these bricks are, that's more what I'm looking for, about 3 times the width. Okay, that'll give us this smallest wall. Can really start, that'll be about that length, and that can really get us going. So that's what we're looking for. Okay, so I need to manipulate the size of this. So we're going to open up the code, and you can create a constructor class. And if you remember, the constructor class is what happens prior to the act method, and it's really used for manipulating maybe the direction, any physical property of the object, or of the class, actually. So not just one specific object, but the entire class. So to create a constructor class, a constructor method, you need to create public and then the name of the class. So now we know that we are editing the wall width small, and we will be using a scaling method in order to get the size of the current wall width small, which is this size, and we are going to need to multiply the width only by 3. So we go back in, we are going to get information of the image, we're going to scale that information, and then we are going to scale, and if you do a scale, it's expecting an x and y value, an int and an int. So an x amount of scaling and a y amount of scaling. So we need to do get image dot get width for the x, get image dot get height for the y. So there's the comma splitting up the x value right here and the y value right here, and this still needs to have an empty parameter because you're accessing the image size. So right now this is scaling it to the same exact width and the same exact height. Now all you need to do here is multiply the width by 3, and that will be our first way of manipulating the width. If you notice, everything's just stretched out 3 times as wide. Okay, that'll make it easier for us. We can start building the width if we wanted to do that there. So now I want to make something that's about not quite 6 times as wide, but something that's going to fit about that, or going to fit about right here. So if we do 6 times as wide, that's a little bit too big. So we're going to do something in between there. So we're going to do another new subclass, wall width medium. We're going to use a brick, okay, and we're going to not reinvent the wheel, but we're going to, and actually, let's just type this out, okay? If you are an experienced programmer and don't feel the need to remember this code, feel free to do a little copy and pasting, but it is important some memorization is needed. A lot of memorization is needed in coding and programming, so it's important to type something more than once. This just get image, if you probably can't remember it off the top of your head. I didn't get it perfectly. Get image, we're going to dot scale the image get image dot get width, and instead of times 3, timesing it by about 5 is a little bit better for what we want to do. Get height, and is that right? I don't even know. Okay, yeah. So medium, width, getting the original image, accessing the image. And then we're going to scale. What are we scaling? Well, the image. That's why you do get image dot scale. This is like saying access the image. For what? For scaling. Then we're going to get image. For what? The width of the image. Okay, get image. For what? To get the height. Okay, so that dot is kind of a dot 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 continuing. Get image, and we're going to scale the image. Get image and get the width of the image. Get image and get the height of the image. Okay, so now that works great for us. We have a wall width 3 times, wall height 5 times, and medium, excuse me, wall width small, wall width medium, and then wall width long will be for the large walls, that because we can mix and match a wall width small and a wall width medium, and that'll work fine for us. But we don't want to have to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then have to line all these up. So having a wall width long, and you don't have to have 3 different types. You can just have 2. I feel like it makes it a little bit easier. So now that we've done it twice, I'm going to go ahead and copy and show you how to copy and paste it. You want to make sure wall width medium turns into wall width long, because that's the class we are in, and not timesing it by 5. I would say we times it by at least 10, maybe 12. Again, these don't have to be exact. We can still mix and match these. You can even overlap the last one if you'd like, but this makes it a little bit easier to be real quick making these long walls. Okay, or you can put a small at the end if you'd like. Whatever you want to do is absolutely fine by me. But now you know how to manipulate a pre-made image, make it bigger or smaller. You can do that for other images in Greenfoot. Sometimes the hitboxes, if it's a square, go a little bit outside of what the original image was, and it can sometimes mess with the hitboxes. It might be in your best interest, instead of trying to shrink something down or increase something, you do what we did with the background and go in where you saved the image and edit the size, make sure you crop it correctly, or and make sure the hitbox is where you want it to be, because that'll definitely affect it. So going forward, we're going to do wall height small, still same brick, wall height medium, and whoops, forgot to put the brick in. I'll set image, go to brick, and wall height tall or long, whatever you want. Okay, whoops, set the brick in. Okay, now you can go into the same code just to save time. Wall height small, still scaling the same image. Instead of timesing by 5 though, since the width of this brick is about half the height, and I'll show you here in a second, I divide my width by 2, and instead of timesing where I times my width by 3 for the wall width small, width was times by 3, I need to double that, times by 6, and I have the width so that it excuse me, wrong thing. So since my height and my width are about half, so this is about, the width and the height are about half, dividing it by 2, the width by 2, and timesing the height by twice as much is one of the options. Now there's different ways you can do it. You could simply take the wall width small and rotate it 90 degrees. So use the same code in the wall width small, and then set your rotation to 90 degrees for that when you go into the height. So you just copy and paste it and then change the rotation for the height. That's another way to do it, but there's different ways to do them all. So this, yep, that's about the size we want. Remember, these can overlap, so making them a little bit not perfect is not at the end of the world. So right, these can overlap, so not the end of the world. So medium, going to be similar to wall height small. So I'm going to copy and paste wall height medium times by, let's see, 10 instead of 5 like we did with the wall width medium. So now this will just take a couple, perfect, 2. This would overlap, perfect. If I want it this size, perfect. So it's looking pretty good on the size there, okay? So tall, similar deal here. Paste, change small to tall. Divide by 2. Instead of timesing by 12, we would need a times by 24. We want it to be just as big. 24, 24. That'll definitely do it. And you probably just need a medium here. Oh, not quite. So however you want to do it. You want to avoid putting in too many walls. Greenfoot will start slowing down. It doesn't do the greatest job, depending on what kind of computer you have, but it doesn't do the greatest job of having enough memory for some of the games that you might want to, especially if you're adding in custom images and things like that, and scaling things. It makes it run a little bit slower, or at least if you put too many walls in. If I had all wall width smalls, or even just all bricks, and tried to make a game, eventually it would slow down and cause a lot of problems. Okay, so now that I have that, I would design my game, and so I'm going to design a little bit of the walls here, just so we can get a little bit of a foundation here, and then so if you start designing the outline of your game, that'll be very helpful as we get moving forward, following pretty much the same path. We can change it up, and I'll be changing it up as we go a little bit, so it works for us. But eventually, what I was saying with the wall height and wall width, and then we will have all of this under walls class. So when we make our, let's save the world, when we make our first character, it's got to be a mouse, right? Got to be the mouse. Okay. If the mouse runs into the wall, anything in the walls class, this walls, all of these inherit any rules in the wall. So I can just say if mouse is touching walls.class, and it will have all these subclasses underneath it, and it will access all of that information. So now I would like you to follow along whatever maze you created. and you make your design how you want it, and then we can go on and start putting in some enemies, start editing our maze so that it's a fully functional game. You'll have a you win, you lose screen, some cheese you can collect in the maze, as well as some boosts, teleports, and things like that. So hopefully you join me next time. I hope you enjoyed getting started on Maze Game Part 1 for Crow's Greenfoot lesson. I always appreciate subscriptions and likes. Any questions, please just leave it as a comment, and I will be quick to answer. So until next time, Crow's Greenfoot lesson, Maze Game Part 1, signing off. Thank you. If I can find...